So hey guys, welcome to another webinar. I'm joined with Manzi, a good friend of mine, who also has done some content with us in the past for Everymind at work, the app. So if you've got access to the app, then you might notice and recognize him. But I wanted to get him on today to stop me from talking every single week, but equally as well to share his wisdom in terms of his outlook in terms of mental health, but also as well sort of talking about positive thinking as well. So welcome, Alex. How are you, buddy?
I'm very well, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm grateful that you asked.
No worries, no worries. And we've got some people joining now. Guys, can you just let us know if you can hear us okay and see us okay? Just say yes if you can. Okay, cool. So we've got Gerard, we've got George, we've got Caroline, we've got Katie, we've got Nancy, we've got Paula, we've got Pia, we've got Richard. Katie was watching the Boris statement. I didn't even know there was a Boris statement on.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Completely switched off. Cool. So everyone can seem to hear us. Good stuff. Cool. So I'm going to step away and Alex is going to lead. But actually, before I do that, I always ask this question, Alex. I always kind of ask them how they are. And not a British typical, how are you? Like, oh yeah, I'm fine. But more of a, how's your week been? So guys, if you want to share that now. Alex, how's your week been?
Overwhelming, to be honest, to be a bit vulnerable. Just got quite a few projects that I'm working on at the minute that are kind of, and it's just there. So a lot of the days have been overwhelming. So I gave myself the weekend. Normally I'm like the type of person who will work, as and when. I gave myself like a couple of days this weekend to like just step away from everything. So I was like, I need, the space in my head to kind of reset and recharge. So yeah, did that. And then, just this morning felt a bit overwhelmed and just trying to take the day as it comes, really. Best way.
Yeah. Got to put yourself first, right? And we speak about this quite a lot, don't we? About how when you're passionate about a subject and passionate about your work, you almost just can work too much, but it's about taking that time out too.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, for me, it's like important not to beat myself up on days where I do feel a bit less productive or a bit more overwhelmed than normal. Like it's a normal thing. Like Caroline said, it's a mixed bag, right? So you got to accept the down days as well as the up days. So it's just knowing how to navigate them.
100%. And I think acceptance is often looked upon as weakness, especially if you're really driven to self-improvement. But, I think for me, the last year, 2 years, like that acceptance has been key in my progress, because as you say, you accept the days when you're not great, you accept the days when you're not productive, you accept the days when you're feeling sort of low or I'm struggling with something. The more I kind of force against it, the worse it makes me feel sometimes, sort of longer term.
Exactly.
No worries, Janine. So just reading out some of these. Katie actually says pubs and restaurants are opening on the 4th of July. 2 meter distance are being lowered. All right, thanks for that update. Pubs always comes first in good old Britain, doesn't it? Week has been better, much mentally fit than the past week. It's good to hear, Gerard. Kate says not bad, feeling productive. George says feel a bit sad. Father's Day brought back painful memories and anxious over the economic. Oh, I can't pronounce it, guys. My speech impediment is kicking in. But George, yeah, I can relate to that. Father's Day is always a mixed bag of emotions. So hopefully this week's a little bit brighter for you. Caroline says a mixed bag as well. Guys, we're going to leave it there now. So I'm going to jump off. I'm going to hand over to Alex, and he's going to lead today's session. So fire away, Alex.
Cool. Cheers, Paul. So hey guys, I'm Alex, as Paul has said, Alex Manzi, to give you some kind of, I guess, background or context as to who I am and what I do. I am a coach, life coach. So I work with people in terms of creating a positive mindset for themselves and ultimately living with more clarity and happiness in life. I have a podcast called In the Moment with Alex Manzi, where I interview different guests from all kind of backgrounds and wonderful worlds and things that they do, and try and understand their kind of mindsets and what it is that they kind of do in their lives to kind of take care of themselves, and all of these great things that we like to have and hear these conversations about. And those are people who are musicians, who are athletes, who are bloggers, who are YouTubers, whatever it is sort range of guests really. So that's a bit about me and what I do. In terms of my story, I guess it's probably a good place to start in terms of building some context around why I do what I do. So my story is that I spent a lot of my life depressed, and then later on suffering from anxiety. And it was, I guess, from the ages of maybe, it's really hard to put a finger on it, to be honest, because it's like, it kind of always felt like that was how I felt. But I think I would say it's from about the age of 17, 18 up until about 25, 26. And what happened was I just lived my life as it was, you know, going through various jobs, various things, various relationships, whatever. And I got to a point in my life where I was with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and we were kind of in her room and we were having a kind of argument. And we were going back and forth, back and forth. And at one point in the argument, she turned around to me and she was like, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And I was a bit perplexed because I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Like, she's just like, "Why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you saying anything?" And something happened in that moment where I realized that what I'd been doing for the whole argument and pretty much my whole life was I'd have conversations in my head thinking that I was having them out loud. And it's really hard to explain because it sounds wild, but I was literally sat on the edge of this bed whilst we were having this debate argument, and she was telling me her point of view, and I was literally just like sat there like responding in my head, not realizing that I wasn't actually saying these things out loud. So when she turned around, she said that, like, the penny dropped, like somehow that something was happening and it wasn't right. And I kind of just flopped back onto the bed and I started crying. And straight away my girlfriend's energy changed into being angry with me to like being concerned. So she was like, what's wrong, like, why are you crying? And the only words that I could get out at the time were, "I don't feel like myself, I don't feel like myself." She kept saying it over and over again, probably like 5 or 6 times. It's the only thing I could say. And in that moment, as I said, I recognized what had been happening throughout my life was that I'd been living under this dark cloud and being someone that ultimately I knew that I wasn't. And that moment there set me off on this journey of kind of self-discovery and trying to understand what happiness was and what does it mean for me? What does happiness mean in general? Like, what is happiness? Where is it? Where do we find it? How do I, you know, turn my mind into something that's more positive rather than this negative space? And just went on this, self-enlightenment, self-discovery, self-love journey. And it started by, I went to therapy. So my girlfriend at the time, her mom was a therapist and she put me in touch with a colleague. I went to a few sessions. I wasn't really feeling the vibe. I was it just felt like a weird space. So I stepped out of that and I just started to like learn things myself. So I started to like fill myself with loads of positivity. So like listening to uplifting podcasts, listening to like, or reading rather books that help me understand kind of mindset and, you know, about life or whatever. And it kind of set me into this space of like, for the first year and a half after that moment in my girlfriend's bedroom, I kind of, although I recognized what it was that I was going through, I hadn't really accepted that what it was me being depressed. I was kind of still fighting against this idea of being depressed and being someone who suffered from depression and whatever. And I had to go through this process of learning and understanding, which like I said, took about a year and a half until I got to a space where actually I accepted what it was that I was going through and had been through. And once I kind of got to that space, I could then find a real space to kind of grow or heal or, you know, evolve, whatever you want to call it, because I was able to drop the idea and the weight on my shoulders of this idea of being depressed. And I was totally fine with the fact that had happened. I was totally fine with the fact that I'd been through everything I'd been through over the past years. I realized it didn't make me a bad person. I realized it didn't mean I did anything wrong in my life. It just is what it was. And I had to learn to accept that, to then almost drop those stories and those ideas so that I could then grow off the back of it. So that whole journey It's taken me up until this day. Many things happened along that way, like changing jobs, leaving jobs, going freelance, starting my podcast, started coaching, and all of these wonderful things, having loads and loads of amazing conversations with people around the world, because I really like to travel, because that's a really great eye-opener for me, and having different conversations with different people who have different perspectives to me. And it helped me kind of cultivate this really nice, positive way of thinking for myself. And I've tried to kind of really understand this for myself, like how it happened, what I did, how I've got to a space of more clarity and happiness, and ultimately acceptance. Like I said at the beginning, I woke up this morning feeling really overwhelmed, but I've learned to accept those feelings for what they are, and I can still carry on with my day without them consuming me like they once would. Like me, maybe 5-6 years ago, I probably would be in bed now. I would have said to Paul, mate, I'm not feeling like 100%. Sorry, and then just get back into bed. But like now I can accept, actually, it's totally fine to have days where I feel overwhelmed. Like I've got a lot of things going on. It's cool. Like I'm gonna feel overwhelmed. Like it's a normal feeling. So I can deal with that a bit better and get on with the day, like I said. So I've tried to kind of really understand this model of understanding, this model of life that I've kind of started to live by. And I've laid it out in many different ways before, but I want to focus this specifically on the creating of the positive thinking. So I think it'd be really beneficial. But that being said, I don't want this just to be me rambling on for the next half hour or so. I want you guys to feel like you're involved, like get involved in the conversation. If there's any questions you want to ask along the way, pop them in the chat box and I can come to them as we go. If there's anything you want me to explain, then feel free to pop it all in the chat box as we go along, and I will get to the questions as we go, rather than waiting for like okay guys, here's now, ask your questions. Like let's just treat it as a conversation and we can do it as we go along. So I guess the starting point then is, what is positive thinking? And it sounds simple, right? It's thinking that is in a positive space, but I think it's more than that. I think it's understanding that space of where positive thinking comes from. And for me, positive thinking comes from when you're operating from a place of clarity. And what I mean by that is operating from that place in your mind where there almost is no thinking. And that might sound a bit deep to begin with, but we all know the space, right? And we all know that the moments that we've lived where there's almost been no thought and we just do. Like that space there breeds positive thinking, because there's space for the positivity and for the love and compassion of life to kind of grow within us. And that's where we really experience the positive space within ourselves to then bring it outwards to everywhere else, because we often get caught up in this idea of happiness being outside of us and being external from us. And we look at all these different things, and me and Paul have spoken loads about this idea of chasing status, and you need the next job to make you happy, you need the right relationship to make you happy, you need the right clothes, you need the next big car, you need the next paycheck, you need all of these things to make you happy. But what you realize is, when you get these things, you're no happier than you were when you wanted them, because you're then looking for the next thing, and then when you get those, you're looking for the next thing. So I've come to understand that actually the happiness doesn't come from these external factors. The happiness comes from the inside of us and our understanding and the way that we perceive and the way that we live life. And that comes through the way that we think. And the way that we think creates our reality. And the way that we think creates everything that we kind of experience around us with the feelings that we have in that moment. So moment to moment, every moment we have a thought, and that thought comes with a feeling. And that feeling determines how you react in that moment. So that could be a good feeling, it could be a bad feeling, but you're going to ultimately feel and react differently dependent on that feeling. So it's really important to understand that every moment we live, we're living in the feeling of our thinking. And that is a really big learning that I have made over the past few years, in terms of like I said this morning, I woke up super overwhelmed. Like that's fine. That's just me having things that I'm, like I said, that are just hanging here that I'm thinking about. But the feeling that is coming with that is a feeling of overwhelm. Right now, I don't have that feeling. So what's different? What's different is the thinking that I'm applying, or the thinking that I'm having in this space, because I'm operating from that place of clarity. I'm operating from that place of no thinking, if that makes sense. And I'm just kind of doing. So those thoughts of being overwhelmed and all of the things that I have to do over the next few weeks aren't there, because they're not existing there, because I'm not giving the attention to them there. So the feeling that comes with it, which is me then feeling overwhelmed or upset or down, has gone with it, because they come together. So when I don't give it the attention, the feeling also reduces. Does that make sense? If you've got any questions at this point, like I said, feel free to pop them in the chat box. Feel free to ask them as we go, because I might go a little bit deep, I might go a little bit fast. So if you want me to slow down, then yeah, like I said, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Caroline says it's a great description. Thank you. I'm glad it is. So positive thinking, right? So one of the big things for me that I realized in terms of like creating a positive mindset for myself was looking for the positives within the negatives, looking for the positives in every situation. And this is almost something that I had to like train myself to do, because I felt like over that, I guess it was like an 8-year period of being depressed, you automatically, your mind is, you've sort of trained yourself to look for the negatives in the situation, which is what you then spiral on. And then once you kind of recognize that, okay, that's what's happened, you've got to understand the relationship between the negative thing that you're seeing and the positive thing. Like they come together, like the positive and the negative, they come as one. Like we've all seen the yin and yang, sign. Like the whole point of that is that you've got the white side is the positive, the black side is the negative, but then you've got the little bit of white in the black, which is the positive within the negative, and vice versa, you've got the negative within the positive. So the reason that's designed in that way is because it's to show you that actually positive and the negative, they operate in the same space together. Like you can't have a positive if the negative doesn't exist, and vice versa. Like they are part of the same thing. So like, I'm just going to use this as an example, right? This is my drinks mat. Like there's two sides to this drinks mat, right? One side's positive, one side's negative. No matter what I do, I cannot get rid of the positive side or the negative side of this mat without the other side existing alongside of it. And that's how positive and negative thoughts show up and exist as well in that space. They come almost as one, they coexist, and we almost choose, I wouldn't say choose, but in any moment we can see one or the other. So what I start to understand is that actually, if I can see the negative thought in any moment, maybe I just have to start understanding what the positive in that moment is. So it's about looking for the positives in a negative situation. So at work, for example, okay, you might have a meeting with your boss, your manager, or your team, whatever, and it might not go very well. So there's probably loads of negatives to take out of that situation. This person said that, this person didn't get this work done, like we didn't talk about any of the things we wanted to discuss. Like all of these things can be there as negatives, but then there's also positives that exist in that space. And the positives could be, okay, well, at least we know that this thing isn't going to work for us. Okay, at least we know that this situation can change, and if we change it, we might get a different result or whatever. So for me, it was about understanding that relationship between the positives and the negatives, and understanding that, like I said, if there's a space of negativity, it's also existing alongside a space of positivity. So it's about, like I said, sort of training your mind to focus or see the positives as well as the negatives. And I'm not saying the negatives disappear. The negatives are still there, of course, because they exist in that space. However, there's also positives in that situation. So it's about understanding how you show up and you see those positives. Pia has said, love the explanation, making the separation between the thought and the feeling. What do you suggest for supporting someone who is currently very much in deep pain and doesn't want to see the positives? Any suggestions as how to approach them? What I would say, and it kind of ties into my next point actually, but what I would say is, in terms of helping someone or wanting to approach a conversation with someone, it's about setting up a safe space. So as a coach, all I do is I create a safe space for someone to talk. And that might mean that I share my feelings or my understandings or my learnings or my lessons. And because I've shared, the other person may feel more likely to share what's on their mind and what they're feeling as well. So for me, it's about creating a safe space and a bubble in that area of that conversation so that someone else will feel comfortable to have or be more open or to have the conversation, you know? So it's about understanding how to create that safe space and what that looks like. And one of the things, picking up on Pia's point again, that says, how can you support someone who's in deep pain? One of the things that really changed a lot for me was gratitude and showing more gratitude in life. It's very easy for us to go through our lives and out of the 100 things that happen in a day, it's very easy for us to focus on the one negative, because those negative feelings and those negative emotions can be quite addictive, and we can almost find pleasure in identifying them. So it's very easy to go through the day and focus on that one negative out of 100, but then what about the 99 positives that have happened? And it might not be really big things. It might just be like, do you know what? I am really grateful for the water that I'm drinking. I'm really grateful for you guys being here on this webinar. I'm really grateful that I'm sat down right now because I just did a 2-hour conversation, stood up, my legs were hurting. Like, so there's loads of things in life that you can look around and be grateful for. And the more that you're able to show gratitude in life, the more of a positive space that you begin to create, because all you're doing is, again, you're showing your mind more of the positives, more of the things to be grateful for. So once you start to look out for little things each day, and you might just start with a simple exercise of writing down 3 things each day that you're grateful for, every morning or every evening, whatever. This is what I started to do personally. So I started to write down 5 things every day, or 3 to 5 things every day in the evening before I went to bed that I was grateful for that day. And all it does is it helps your mind open up and find the space to actually see the positives in each day, no matter how small. It could be being really grateful for the cup of tea that you drink in the morning, or it could be really grateful for the 10-minute break you took away from your desk, or it could be really grateful for the conversation you had with your colleague at work, or it could be really grateful that you wrote that difficult email. Whatever it is, right? It's about finding the things to be grateful for, and that creates a space where you start to experience more positivity, because you're actively saying to yourself, actually, I am grateful for these things. And that brings on, when you're grateful for something, you think positively about it, which brings that positive feeling with it. So you're actively bringing those positive feelings, you know, within you. So you're seeing something, you're going, this is great, I really appreciate it, I'm really grateful for it, positive feeling, positive thought. So it starts to kind of build day to day, and you start to, like I said, almost train your mind to see those mini wins, those mini positives, those little things to be grateful for every day. Georgia said, how can you minimize or rationalize those negative impulses if they proliferate? Again, I think it comes down to the gratitude thing, and hopefully the other points that we're going to go on to discuss as well. When you start to understand them all together and how they work together, the negative impulses, you know, they're always going to be there. Like I said, the negative impulses, negative thoughts, negative feelings don't just go away. They always exist. It's about how you then show up and react to those negative impulses and those negative thoughts. So gratitude is a great way, because then actually you start to say, okay, this might be a negative situation, but actually there's 5 things to be grateful for around this situation as well. So the next area, unless anyone has any questions at this point or wants to pop anything in the chat box that we can come to, The next area that I like to discuss is the idea of finding space. And as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, when you begin to find the space within your mind, within your body, within your day, you actively are creating space for the positive and for the good to breed in, because we often constrict ourselves with negativity. That's all we're doing, is we're restricting ourselves, we're constricting ourselves with negativity. But when you start to open that out and create space, there's more space for the being rather than the doing and the thinking. And when you're just in a space of being and experiencing and living, you're living with more love, you're living with more compassion, and that brings more feelings of positivity with it as well. And what I mean by that is, as an example, for me, I'm really big on meditation. Like, I will meditate every day, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, because for me, that's a really great place to create space. And what that space does is it allows my mind, not just the actual space, but the time to process. Because when we're caught up in our busy days and our hectic work days, our hectic social life, well, not so much social lives these days, but apparently from 4th of July though, but you get what I mean, right? Family life, relationships, we're going from one thing to the other, and we're not creating space for ourselves to actually process what it is that we're feeling, what it is that we've been thinking. And for me, meditation is a great way to do that. But there's many other ways you can do it. Like, you can get the same thing through exercise. Like the gym, when we could go, was like one of my sanctuaries in the morning. I'd go to the gym 4 times a week, 7 a.m. I'd be there, because I knew that hour and a half, I wasn't going to be disturbed. I could put my headphones in, I could listen to a podcast, I could just get on with my exercise. And what I often found was that because I was in the most simplistic space in terms of all I had to worry about in the gym was whatever exercise I was doing and whatever was coming into my ears via my headphones, that actually I'd have more space in my mind to process thoughts, to process feelings, to process ideas. Some of the most creative things that I've come up with were while I was working out or in the gym. Likewise, going for a walk, just leaving everything behind, leaving your stories, leaving your mood, leaving your emotions behind, walk out the door and just go for a walk, half an hour, 20 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, whatever it is. Put on some tunes if you want to put on some tunes, and just walk. Don't walk with a plan. Don't walk with a goal of trying to achieve anything. Just walk and just enjoy. And again, you create space in your day and in your time to actually process. And that's all the space does. It allows you to process a lot of the overthinking, a lot of the negativity that's in your mind, in order to create that space for the positivity, for the clarity, for the happiness, for the love, for the compassion to come through. And another great way is, it's a really simple one. If you're working a lot and you're kind of chained to your laptop or your desk, if you're still going into the office, take a break. Just take 10-minute breaks every now and then. And that might mean just walk over to the kitchen, put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, and just focus on that process of making that tea. Be in that moment, be really mindful with it. Leave everything behind. We carry a lot with us throughout the day, and we forget that actually everything that we think and everything that we feel is temporary. Like, thoughts and feelings, they come and go, they're up and down. So to break up that day and to create more space, you might just need to take a break. And that might mean, like I said, going to make a cup of tea. That might mean just stopping and checking in with your breath, bringing yourself into the present, bringing yourself away from the thinking mind. Just check in with your breath, count out maybe 4 or 5 cycles of inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Just count them out and then go back to what it is that you're doing. Like, you've stopped and you've created space, even for a few moments, to just bring that level of calm down, open up that space within you. And it's a really great ways to just create that. And, none of these are one size fits all kind of remedies, but if you can understand the idea of space and what it represents and what that space looks like and feels like to you, then you'll know already what those things are. Like, for me, like I said, meditation and exercise are great. For someone else, it might be going for a short walk. For someone else, it might be just putting on their favorite jazz CD while they drive home or whatever. Like, just find the time to create that space for yourself. Or even like sometimes it's like arriving at the front door when you get home, and actually just take a minute for yourself. Just stop, breathe, take a minute, step in the door, and leave all of that stuff behind you at the door and step in with a fresh mind. That can be all the space you need. So have we got any other questions at this point about space, about any of the ideas there that we were discussing, before we jump onto the kind of final point that I wanted to discuss today, which is around expectations. And a lot of our thinking and a lot of the positive and the negative thoughts that and feelings that come about are very closely related to expectations, because more often than not, we place our happiness on a desired expectation of a certain situation. So, silly example, right? If I text someone who I'm dating, right, as an example, and I text them expecting them to reply because I want the attention. If I text them expecting a reply, the longer that they don't reply for, the more frustration and the more negativity I build up in myself, because I've placed the expectation of me feeling happiness when they message back on that exact action. So when that action doesn't happen, I then feel the opposite and feel the frustration. So that's just a silly example, but hopefully you understand the kind of idea of placing an expectation on other people, on other things, of desired outcomes, and placing your happiness in those expectations, so that when those expectations and that desired outcome doesn't occur, you're actually left facing the opposite, which is the negative thoughts, the negative feelings of frustration, of anger, of sadness, of loneliness, whatever it may be. So it's about understanding that actually if you're not placing your expectations or your desire for feeling happiness or clarity, whatever, in a certain outcome, then it doesn't matter either way. There's an amazing quote from Krishnamurti, who's an Indian philosopher, where he says, "My secret to life is that I don't mind what happens." And I think that's a great way to sum up the idea of expectations. If you don't mind what happens one way or the other, then you don't have an expectation on the outcome, and therefore that outcome won't seemingly make you feel one way or the other, because ultimately, like we were talking about in the beginning, you only internalize those feelings and those thoughts to create the reality that you're living. So it's because you've had this thought in your mind about a desired outcome that when you then start to go down the trail of all of the thoughts that follow that, you then create this negativity within yourself because you've created an expectation on an outcome that hasn't arrived. Does that make sense? Because I know that one there particularly can be quite difficult to understand sometimes. So if that isn't clear, let me know. If you've got any questions, let me know and we can work around it. But ultimately it's about, like I said, the four key areas really is understanding the positives and the negatives, and that they exist in the same space, and that actually where there's negatives, there's always going to be positives. Looking for gratitude, showing more gratitude in life, which opens you up to more feelings of love and compassion. Finding and understanding how to create space for yourself, and space in your mind, your body, your thinking. And then the understanding of expectations and placing expectations on different outcomes for a desired feeling, or whatever it is. So I hope that all makes sense. So at this point, light bulb moment for me regarding expectations, says Janine. Makes sense, says Caroline. Makes sense, says Zinab. So at this point, if there's any questions that you guys have, just in general, if there's anything that you just want to ask or anything that I haven't covered, then feel free to pop them in the chat boxes. If there's anything you want to know about general feelings or dealing with things, or tips or advice or tricks, like I said, more than happy to answer them. So if there's any burning questions, as we say, for you that you want to know, then pop them in the chat box and I will come around to them as they pop up. Other than that, I hope that's all been very helpful for you guys. I hope that also, because Paul's jumped in, if you've got any questions for Paul, put him under the spotlight.
No question. I just wanted to jump in as well. That last, I think,
Yeah.
who was it? Janine said about expectations. I think that's so key, right? It's like you were saying about your overwhelm, right? Your overwhelm is probably your own expectations of yourself and the work that you believe that you need to be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we spoke about detachment quite a lot as well, right? And
I think,
would you say detachment comes in there with expectations as well?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the underlying theme, really, is like not being attached to outcomes, not being attached to ideas, to stories. Like, ultimately life is dynamic, it changes, it's cyclical. And we understand a lot of this. And I think, particularly with what we've seen at the minute with COVID and the pandemic, like all of this stuff that we thought was secure and safe and going to work and getting on tubes, and just the way we were living day to day just got taken away in almost an instant. And it's like so many people had attachments to this way of living and to these ideas of what life was and what happiness meant to them, that a lot of people have been faced with really strange emotions having all of that taken away, because that was like, people were so attached to that as a normal. But like, this is the new normal now. So it's like, if you don't have the attachment to the way things were before, then you're never going to be comfortable living the way we've been living now,
Yeah, I agree. George says, happiness based on other people's expectations are like moving goalposts, which you may never reach.
Exactly.
Do you think, I know we're going to wrap up, but do you think as well that a lot of that comes from sometimes we want to control situations? And I think, I can't remember who asked the question. It was Pia, I believe, as well. Like, I talk quite a lot about when someone you love is going through a very dark period, that I'm someone who wants to control that. I'm someone who wants to take that away from them. I'm someone who wants to make all of that pain go away as well. And that's why I feel like some people, myself included, really struggles with that detachment from expectations as well, like that control element. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. But I think like ultimately, I'm gonna go very like zen and like spiritual on you, but like, how much control do we actually have? Like, do we actually control anything? Do we control our feelings? Do we control our thoughts? Do we control the way other people react? Do we control, what do we actually control? Is control just an idea that we have and a story that we have around ourselves to make ourselves feel comfortable and to seek desired outcomes and expectations in certain areas of our lives through that control? I have no control. I could stand up off of this chair and my back could go. I've got zero control over that. I don't know. It could happen. It might not. But we think I'm pretty comfortable in like, actually I'm in control here. Like, I know if I stand up, my back's not going to go, but I can't be sure. Can't tell you that far. I couldn't say 100% guarantee it, because we've kind of got this idea of wanting to control in our minds. And I think ultimately, really and truly, we don't control a lot. And I think we've seen that with the pandemic,
I believe as well, like we've spoken about it and you alluded to it at the beginning of your story about how sometimes we control the external because we're worried about, the internal. So I share my story of like having a rented house, rented car, business, wearing suits, all of that. So everyone was like, oh, Paul's happy, Paul's successful. But internally, that was just my way of like masking what was really going on in here. And in a way, that's similar to control as well, is like I'm trying to control these external elements because I'm struggling to control what's in here.
Yeah, and I think it does come down to like we control because we want to control because we're comfortable and we want to remain in that space of comfort. But actually, when you start to step outside of your comfort zone, there's an element of this perceived control that we lose, and that makes us feel uncomfortable, And I think that's it. We try and set our lives up externally because we feel like we can control these things. But if you're not coming from the space of clarity and the space of happiness and the space of positivity, what are you really controlling? Even those things you can't control in a way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Caroline's just made a point here as well. She said, I think as humans, we always want to help fix people, but most of the time it's about being there for them and to hold space for them. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, that is it really. And I think it's, as we say, it's hard. Like my eldest is in the other room. He might hear me, but obviously, he's getting older. He's starting to experience emotions. He was, up late last night because he was fearful of death and all of these. And I tried to sit with him and sort of say, look, these are all normal emotions. I experienced them when I was your age too. But as a parent, my natural reaction is, oh my God, I wish I could just take this away from him. I wish I could just make this go away. I want to try and solve it for him. But, as Caroline says, it's about like giving them that space, letting them know that you're there, but equally knowing that it's also up to him in a way to be able to sort of navigate those emotions. Because if I just take everything away from him, he's not going to be able to have that emotional intelligence in a way to navigate it himself. And that scares the hell out of me. Like even saying it right now scares the hell out of me. I want to make sure that he's all right. But like, as you say, it's holding space for them and letting them know that you're there.
I think it comes down to like, seeing ourselves as kind of facilitators. And that's all we are. We facilitate by adapting to the situations around us. And that example there with your son is like, your role is to facilitate him creating a greater understanding of his thoughts and his feelings. You can't even control your own feelings. So how are you gonna control his emotions? Like he needs to understand how to, navigate those for himself, like you said. And our role as a parent, as friends, as a partner, as a coach, as a whatever, is to facilitate all of that and create that kind of space, as Caroline said, like holding space for them and creating a space for that to happen in.
Amazing. Alex, thank you so much for your time. Can we show some love for Alex? Can we say thank you, Alex, or whatever you want to say? But no, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to, I don't think they can do thumbs up on here. Taking the time out of your day to, as I say, share your story, which again, as I think Nancy said, is obviously difficult to do. With kind of, especially if you're having a bad sort of morning. So yeah, appreciate you taking the time out as always. And if there's anything I can do to help you, then just let me know.
Of course, and likewise, man. And thank you guys for staying here and for listening to me ramble on for the past 40 minutes or so. But it's been good fun.
Sweet, you're getting some love. That gives you a bit of dopamine, right?
Yeah, dopamine
hitting the brain. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your week, and if there's anything you need in between now and then, just drop me an email. I'm happy to help. All right, see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Alex.